This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Hello and welcome to the 9 to 5 podcast. My name's Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And this week we're doing a 9 to 5 roundup with a couple of stories, one of which you may not be so familiar with and one you're probably very aware of, but was certainly such a big story that we kind of felt we should cover it too. But starting off with the one which is certainly in the news but may not have ceased the headlines every day last week. And once again, it's dealing with the Ontario Liberals kind of rolling out their policies for the next election. And, really this podcast is, if you've had one sort of subject that we've just come back to again and again and again, it's housing and development and everything to do with that. And Bonnie Crombie has announced the More Homes You Can Afford plan to make buying or renting a home more affordable. But why don't you kick off, Joel, and give your kind of reaction to it first, and then I'll come in with mine.
I'm glad to hear that somebody in the Ontario Liberal Party is listening to this podcast. And after our last episode where we basically said, well, I stated Bonnie Crombie has zero chance of winning a seat in the 905 because, they've just kind of been twiddling their thumbs. They've come out with a pretty substantial policy plank. And I looked it over and I thought, it's good. I'm going to give my credit where I think it's due. It's good. It is substantive. It is. If you didn't read it, basically it's eliminating all developer charges for new home builds. I believe under 3,000 square feet. So it's not like the McMansions would still get the development charges attached to them, but all the smaller homes would be development charge free. To offset that cost, there'd be some fund made up that the province would pay out to municipalities to cover the costs for like things like sewage, road maintenance, hydro hookup, all that the stuff that development charges were supposed to pay for. So that's good. The elimination of the land transfer tax for first-time home buyers, which is good. Get more people into the housing market. Fantastic, like that. And then the last one is to try and bring in phased-in rent control, which is something I'm not entirely familiar with. Apparently, it's really worked well in Manitoba to help stabilize rents and keep rents from running away. Is it everything that I would say would be like this is a plan that's really going to tackle housing in Ontario? No. I read this. I'm like, it's good. I like what I'm reading. I need more. And this seems like something that would be great for you and I were talking offline. Like this does seem like a Pierre Poilievre playbook, right? It's just let's cut taxes, cut regulation, and all that, which is fine. But, and this is the big but, at the provincial level, there's so much more power that the legislature has over housing, building codes, permit structures, the entire mechanism for planning is controlled by the province. There's so much bureaucracy that can be sped up or manipulated to get the housing that we need done. Doug Ford's not doing it. And I find that I appreciate the Liberals putting forward something finally that you can stick your teeth into. I'm kind of like this should have come out last year. We should be talking about, what's next on the housing file, and this should be something that Bonnie Crombie and the Liberals should have been hammering Doug Ford with for a year on why aren't you getting housing done? It's good. My gut tells me it's too little, too late.
Yeah, my reaction, in all honesty, is a lot more negative than yours. Uh, you said it was substantive, and my feeling is that um, the problem is that not enough new housing is being built, and of the housing that is being built, it's not of the right type. It's just it's expensive housing aimed at uh, overwhelmingly at wealthier homeowners, and even aimed at the sort of market that buys property and sits on it, and this kind of thing. Uh, there's nothing in here really that builds anything. So eliminating the provincial land transfer tax. Now that's great if you're a first-time home buyer or a downsizing senior. That will be you will enjoy that individually. You will like that. So it's a tax cut. Everybody loves tax cuts. What does it do to the housing market? Nothing, because the housing market will absorb that extra money that you've got and say, okay, well now you can afford to pay more for your house. So it's not, the housing market is a supply and demand issue. It's not solved by how much money is in the system, really. It's like how much money we've all got is irrelevant to the demand for housing, because there's still the same number of people going out to the same number of houses, and they're comparatively still poorer or richer than others. So my view of that is it's a tax cut. It does nothing. All it does is it means that the provincial government is now X amount poorer off, and it's going to have to cut other services to pay for it. Scrapping development charges, well, we've already been down this road. Apparently, they're going to replace it. Basically that helps developers. Again, actually does bugger all for the price of anything, because the price of housing isn't based on how much it costs to build a property. And them saying, well, development charges adds 170,000 to the price of a new home. Bollocks. The price of a new home is based on what the market will support. It has nothing to do with how much the bricks and the mortar cost that built the thing. It's purely based on, just like gas, like what we pay for gas isn't based on how much it costs to pull the gas out of the ground. It's based on what the petroleum industry and the various organizations that set prices think that they can get away with right now, based on what it's not a simple supply and demand situation. So scrapping development charges, yeah, that's great for developers. It makes things a little bit cheaper for them to build. But really, developers wanting to build and building is not really the issue. The issue is that they're building the wrong damn stuff. Nothing here is going to encourage them to build the right stuff. Well, I guess it's aimed at slightly lower income housing, so it doesn't cover the McMansions. So fair enough. I'll take that back to an extent, right, that it's aimed at that. But still, it's like, okay, fine. But you're tweaking with what Doug Ford's already done. What's different from Doug Ford here? That's just
that's why I'm being very generous. I agree. I don't see the magic bullet that all of a sudden this is going to spark a housing build or housing boom, because you're right. Like Doug Ford eliminated development charges a couple of years ago, and there was no runaway housing build. It wasn't just all of a sudden this mad rush to get shovels in the ground and foundations laid and these houses built. It was just, okay, well, we'll get it done then. And of course, Doug Ford had to walk it back because municipalities were saying, well, we can't afford this. That this is good. It's good because it kind of helps, I guess, stimulate the idea of we can build more. But you're right that okay, we're going to eliminate the development charges on anything under 3,000, like the smaller units. The problem is here in the 905, where do those small units go? Like where are the major the major developments? Like we have hit, for a lot of communities in the 905, we've hit that greenbelt wall. That's why we had the greenbelt scandal. People adamantly said we do not want to build into the greenbelt. A lot of communities have hit that wall. So the question now is, where do you build? You can have like piecemeal, here and there. If somebody tears down a house and what was one house, you can turn into two. That's going to show up here and there, but that's not a massive construction boom, where we need, 5-figure units being built. The real thing is Bonnie, are you in favor or are you not in favor of a 4 unit building as of right in the 905? Are you going to allow that middle density to be the law of the land so that we can build those houses, those units for young families, new families to get them, off the streets, out of the parks into good, safe housing that's affordable to people's incomes, and just get this building, get people to buy condos or apartments and whatnot. I that to me is that's the big policy decision that is needed in the province right now. I think is what's going to set the Ontario Liberals apart, is that they say, no, it's not just a matter of financing. It's not how we finance it. That's the problem. Is we actually need to change the building codes and the law of the land to allow not, it's, again, we've said right now the laws basically state it's tall or sprawl. You can either build a 30-story condo tower or you can build out a new subdivision. Are you going to say no? We need to change things. Like, go to your city, the old city of Mississauga, and say fourplex units are now
Yeah.
will be as of right on day one of my tenure as premier. We're going to allow that so we can get this middle density built and get people housed quickly. And the other thing is, I want to see some kind of social housing plan. We need to get people.
Well, yeah, that was what I was going to come on to
Sure.
next. So the last piece in the plan is making rents more affordable by tweaking the rent control system. Now, there's kind of a right. I was renting until fairly recently, a few months ago, and my rent was rent controlled. And it would, if I'd stayed renting, it would have stayed rent controlled for eternity. Like, so there's kind of a myth that Doug's abolished rent control, and that's not the case. They may be abolishing it on some new builds or all new builds, but the vast majority of rental accommodation in Ontario is rent controlled, just the way it always has been. Um, and I actually think that's a bad thing, to be honest. I come from a country that's perceived as far more kind of socialist friendly, if you like, certainly as far as their municipal government goes, in terms of housing and things like that. And there's no rent control in Britain, no such thing. It's controlled by the market, and the market is fine when you've got enough housing being built for people. Trouble is with Ontario and Canada and most of North America is we don't build affordable housing. And we haven't built affordable housing for decades and decades and decades. We haven't built housing aimed at the rental market for decades and decades and decades at any significant amounts. And what's part of the reason for that? Well, if you're a landlord, all your tenants are going to have rent control. Why the hell would I want to do that? It's like, it's not a free market. I can't set my own price. I can't sell my product for the market going rate. And that is the most socialist thing out there. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem. Another way in which Britain has controlled the rental market is through vast, huge, publicly funded public housing, huge estates built after the Second World War, but still, it still exists today. Like, every town has a large chunk of council housing, what's called council housing. And that can be high rise, it can be low rise, it can be everything in between. And a lot of it is very high quality and it's decent and it's affordable, and it brings money into the municipal government, actually. And that's great. And that's a very socialist thing too. So I'm not saying socialism is bad necessarily. It can work. But when you're talking about something that is meant to be, you can't kind of do this half-ass thing where you mix open market with a controlled price. I don't think it works with insurance. It doesn't work with housing. You can't say to people, well, you're not going to charge what you have to charge for insurance. We're going to make you reduce the rates because we think it's too expensive. It's like, well, okay, then we're not going to insure your cars the same, because it doesn't work.
I get what you're saying. I think the problem is we get into this habit of we put in rent controls and rents freeze, and then we get into the problem where landlords can't adjust rents accordingly for either market conditions or just to do proper maintenance on their properties, to upkeep.
Yeah, so we've seen
but I,
quite often people trying to take properties out of a rental environment and turn them into condos
right.
as a way to make the money that they can't under rent, or it encourages them to do upgrades. The only way they can get a rent increase is by doing upgrades and replacing the elevators and
Right.
things like that.
And that's, but that, but then we get the argument of, okay, then we're going to free up rent controls. And that's where we get the cases of like what we're seeing is rent evictions. Like we see the encampments in our parks and they're full of people who are saying, I was evicted by my landlord because he wanted to rack up the rent, 200% or 50%. And I can't afford that. Now, part of that is also living wage arguments. And that's a whole other episode. We're not going to get into that. But my take on it, and this is, if I was a candidate for premier of this province, I'd be looking at, basically making it law that 5% of all new unit projects being built, 5% are turned over to some kind of municipal housing corporation, which are then rented out on a income adjusted basis to the lowest income earners. And I'm not saying that's permanent, but I think right now we're in the middle of the need to build massive amounts of units. The cost of that will be spread out over the cost of other people buying it, which would be no different than you being taxed to using tax dollars to pay for it. I don't think the average homeowner will really feel the burn on that. It'll be spread out amongst, a new unit, a tower unit goes up with so many hundreds of units. 5% of those units turn over to a municipal housing corporation. The cost that being spread out amongst all those units isn't going to be raise the price that substantial, maybe $1,000 or $2,000, maybe.
No, and that kind of thing has been done, and it was part of previous legislation under the Liberals. I mean, I don't know, frankly, right now. I should do, but I don't. Whether that has been withdrawn by the Conservatives or whether that law is still in place. But municipalities can do that. I can't remember there's a term for it, but they certainly could require exactly that kind of thing.
But but the problem is, I think municipalities have to demand and negotiate it, and that gives the power for developers to push back, say, I'll give you 2 units when in fact what you really need is 5, right?
Yeah.
And if you say in law it says no 5%, which means that might be 1 unit, might be 2, might be 3, might be 5. Who knows? Depends on the size of the unit. Must be turned over to a municipal housing corporation, which then in itself would be able to recoup enough capital that they themselves could build entirely social projects, like social housing projects scattered throughout the municipality, which in turn goes into bringing down rent. If that, as you said, good, clean, decent, affordable renting is available to the lowest, it's available to anybody. It then brings down the rent on the free market, because those private rental units are then say, well, I've got to compete. I have to compete with the public, and that to me is that your market way of keeping rent in check for affordability. These are things that we're not seeing from, to kind of bring this back to the Ontario Liberals. These kind of ideas that make you stop and say, wait a minute, I got to process this. This announcement got a lot of praise by progressives saying, this is great. It's what we wanted. And I would agree. Yes. I don't think it goes far enough. I think it scratches the surface as well. I think it should have come out a year and a half ago. These aren't new ideas.
There's nothing here about actually building homes. I mean,
yeah.
Again, after the Second World War, many countries said, the phrase that was used at the time is, we need to build homes fit for heroes, make sure people aren't coming back from wartime and going back into slums. These heroes who saved us from the Nazis should have decent places to live. And so governments just dipped into their pockets and built a shit ton of housing. I think that's what's just like, just pay for the stuff.
That's what I don't
But
get is
there's
we're
just
told.
this mental block that we can't do that in here,
Well,
and it's like I don't understand why not. Just build it,
what
and
I'm amazed
people
at
pay rent
is,
for this stuff. Like you get your money back because you will
yeah,
be
people,
charging rent regardless
yeah,
of who's in it.
what I get it, but like we had Mike Moffat on a few times to talk about this topic, and his refrain is always, it's going to take a wartime effort to really
Yep.
tackle this problem. And I agree with him. I think like the at some point, the government itself, whether the federal or provincial government, is going to have to put money, pull in the money and find some way of actually building this stuff. Um, the difference between I think World War II and now is in World War II, Roland, like Britain was devastated. There's bombed out craters that you could just literally just build brand from
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
foundations up. We don't have that luxury. Luxury is a bad choice of words. I'm sorry to any veterans who might be listening. I apologize. That was not my intention. However, I think you see my point is they were literally starting over and they were able to build these units for the vets coming back and their families. We can't do that because we've built sprawl. So that's why I think my idea is a better idea. We're going to have to start building this stuff, and we're going to have to start building condos. We're going to have to start building apartment buildings, new condo buildings. We're going to have to find some way of building up a social housing portfolio to help bring those rent prices down. Uh,
So I
Also, I think
certainly think it would be a start if, yeah, if that wherever it currently exists could be, yeah, absolutely enforced to a much greater degree, so that basically you're getting, yeah, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, council housing basically built by the private sector. They still get paid. They're not giving this stuff away for free.
right.
They still will get paid for that housing. It will all get paid for in the fullness of time. It may take a little while, but I mean that's the
We
housing market anyway. Everything gets paid for in the fullness of time, or it's getting
well,
borrowed from banks or whatever.
the other thing I wanted to see was talk about a land value tax, some way of you and I have talked many times about how this a big problem is we make it sound like developers are trying to find all this land to build. And it's not that's the problem. They have a lot of cases if you go into your municipality's public records and you see that that vacant lot that that'd be great to put a couple houses on or an apartment building or whatever, you're going to find out chances are it's probably already bought, purchased, and approved by a developer. They're waiting for quote unquote the right market conditions. Whatever that is, it basically means we need to be able to buy the material and sell the units at a high enough price that we make a really amazing profit off of it. There is no time there is no fees being lit to get this stuff done. It is just we wait and see. If they wait another year to build it, does that mean the price might go up per unit? Probably. And might say, well, I'll build the units on the next lot over. And I'll take my time to build those. And when I get to this, I'll get to it. And if I get to it and the cost is too high, I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to I won't make as much money off of it as if I did if I wait a year. They'll wait the year. We don't have, we're in a crisis. Like in the old model, we were okay with that. Say, okay, fine, you're a business. You got to make money as you make money. I think we've got to face facts of you're going to make money on it. You just can't make, oodles and oodles of money off it. Like we got to have to say, if we put in a land value tax, that land now becomes costly to you just to sit on and not do anything with. That means you got to, you got to get building, and if not building, sell to. Because the other problem is we have speculators run rampant in this province. The number of developers who are developers in name only, they just buy land, hold on to it, and they sell it to somebody else down the road when they say, okay, it's going to be worth, 2, 3, 4 times what I bought for it, and I make a nice profit and walk away. There's a whole industry in this province that works that way. We need to do away with that. And I think if you brought in a land value tax, rather than property tax from municipalities. Um, that lights the fuse underneath their butts to get shovels in the ground, foundations laid, and stuff built and sold to you and I. And that, I think, my gut tells me the Liberals are probably a little bit too timid to do that, because I can't imagine there are a lot of developers who, the next day are going to be keen on saying, "Oh my God, now I got to find ways to either sell this land or develop it." And
No, my feeling is that Bonnie Crombie is almost as in the pocket of developers as Doug Ford
oh,
is. Frankly, uh, prove me wrong. I don't know. Uh, yeah, I mean, like things take a very long time to get built. I mean, I'm familiar enough with a bunch of development proposals that were being done between about 2012-ish and 2020-ish. I pay less close attention to the new ones coming along now, quite frankly. But in Burlington, but of all the developments that are being proposed at that time and that were going through council and getting approved, and again, this thing with the councils was the slowing things down. The council's part in this process was done years ago. I mean, in some cases, a decade or more ago. Councils had nothing to do with it for years and years and years, and there's still no sign of anything being built. Certainly, there was a bunch of stuff around the 2018 mark that came forward, and the city was going through its own stuff, but basically that doesn't really affect the developers very much because everything goes to the OLT anyway. So I know what's happening with that stuff at the OLT. Some of it's been improved, some of it hasn't. I know the proposal to replace the major hotel in Burlington, the old Travel Lodge, was rejected. Thank God, a monstrous proposal by the developer. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff that won't be rejected. I suspect but like we're talking about the amount of bitching that went on about the council saying boo about any of this stuff. And yet, the council basically has a few months to sort of have its say, which happened back in the midst of time, frankly, at this stage.
right.
And where are those buildings? Well, they're nowhere closer to being built today than they were 7 years ago.
And that's what I think is frustrating. Is like Bonnie Crombie was the mayor of Mississauga. She shouldn't be unfamiliar with this entire process, and she must understand or be aware of just the bureaucratic ridiculousness of, a proposal comes in and it should just be a yay or nay argument. Like I'm the idea that a developer can't make money off of a plan. If a plan is in place for a certain height of so many stories for a condo tower or a development of such, so many size of units to fit so many people onto a plot of land, either you can build it or you can't. If you can't build it, then you don't get the proposal. You have to figure out how to make that profitable. Now, can you make a 30, if a 30-story tower is more profitable over 20-story? Absolutely. Now, I think the problem that comes down to is the OLT. Like, why wouldn't you just say to municipalities, like, you are on the hook for this then? Because again, I say then just do it with the OLT and say, forget the plan altogether. Build whatever you want. We got to get it done. Who cares about plans or zoning or whatnot? Just say, build a thing. Who cares?
We've already got a problem in this country of too many levels of government second guessing other levels of government. And basically, OLT adds a whole other level to that,
exactly.
to that process. It's like, municipalities have to jump through massive hoops to get their official plans approved by the province. Who approves them? The province does. After the regions approve them, after everybody else has been through them, after they've been challenged by this, and after they've been appealed to the OLT, after this, that, and the other, they finally get approved. And then immediately I guess we saw it with the official plan in Burlington when there was this whole hoo-ha about the official plan that came in under Mayor Rick Goldring. the very first thing that kind of, I mean, and I'm being a bit fuzzy about the details here, but in essence, the very first thing that came forward under the new rules, kind of sorta, um, blew through the new limits that official
Mhm.
plan had set. And that's one of the ones which has still not been built, of course, but goodness knows, somewhere in the
But
process it's
that's
still going forward. It's like, well, what was the point of all this? It's an
well, that's just it.
absolute waste of time.
She like as a mayor, she should know the bureaucracy and the rigmarole in this, the games that are played. And I want to see more substantive things for from a housing standpoint. We just taking away taxes is it's a good way to, in theory, bring down the price of housing. But here's the problem: is if that same developer, as you said, is saying, "Well, I'm going to put in a proposal. It's going to I'm going to put it past the official plan because I know I'm going to go challenge it at the OLT, and the municipality is going to fight you on it." Well, that just adds time on. That's time and money. So who
Like if you
cares?
if
Who cares
you if you
if the development charge reduces $100,000 if the developer is now saying, "Well, I'm going to have to charge each unit $100,000 to make up for my legal fees
yeah,
that
yeah,
I
no,
had to go to
exactly,
the
yeah,
OLT."
yeah.
Like, I want a
I mean,
holistic approach to this, and that's the thing is the province has
mhm.
so much power
And
to allow this.
it's ultimately the developers and the province that are slowing everything down, not the bloody municipalities. If you want to speed up development, if you really want to speed up development, abolish the OLT, don't replace it with anything, and say municipal official plans are now cast iron.
Yes,
Whatever it says, it's been approved by the province as good, as acceptable, as within, reaching all the provincial targets. So it's good.
and
No
if you want,
appeals, no appeals,
no,
no
if
time
you
wasting going to the LT, none of that. Everybody knows where they stand. Developers
but
know
if
where they stand. It says 12 stories, great. We'll build a 12-story building because that's what it's asking for.
but
The
if you
market
want to appeal it,
will fit to a 12-story thing because no one will be saying, well, actually, we're going to build 30. So you've got to buy this land for this cost.
well,
It will.
I would say though that I would say if you do want to appeal it, you can take your chance, but the final say is at the council. You go to the
I mean,
council, hands and
you
knees,
can
and
you
then,
can appeal stuff in. So again, I'm just picking the UK as an example. In the UK, there's no equivalent of the OOT per se, but if you want to, if you feel that you're being screwed over by a council, you take them to court. You don't have a special body to
right.
appeal every damn thing. You appeal when you feel that you're being screwed over and you've got a case that a judge will look at and go, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's what we have is a second guessing system. That's not how justice is supposed to work.
Well,
Uh,
what we have is it's the illusion of democracy, right? It's the illusion of, okay, well, I
mhm.
elected this council to come up with a plan. They put down a plan. It's okay. They consult with the people, the citizens, they have our focus groups, all that stuff, and we all come with a plan. It's just okay. I like this. We're good. It doesn't matter because if a developer says, well, no, the real final answer is at the OLT. So that's my goal. And you're the municipality is just another department, another queue to get in line for to fill the paperwork at to get the ball rolling. But I know I just have to fight you. I've got my high priced lawyers sitting in the wings. We're going to go to the OLT. I have a better shot at winning them over because they just might be exhausted and say, "Yeah, I don't care. I got to get to my golf game. Approved. Let's go." And yeah, the municipality might win, but miss, it's 90% chance it's going to win in favor of the developer.
Well, like I
And
say, I mean, my understanding is that this big proposal downtown Burlington to redevelop the hotel on the waterfront
mhm,
failed. But that,
that's an exception to the rule. It's
yeah,
not like it's not like it'll be
that
told like see the OLT works. Like, yeah, the reason why the city was so ecstatic about it is because my bet they're saying we weren't expecting to win. Oh my
well,
God, we actually
yeah.
won
So
one.
as I presume, again, I haven't looked at the details, folks. So I know probably should have done, but I'm an old man and I'm limited time. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it was like that as a particularly sensitive location that perhaps even the OLT had to take sort of
But
some
see,
kind
here's
of
here's
note
the
of.
thing. Here's the thing. If the council had the final say on what happened on at that unit, at that hotel. Like right now, the developer is out of money. It's going to cost a lot more money to build that whatever goes there if they want to knock it down, or now they have to sell it off, or whatever they want to do with it. That's going to cost more money. It just drives up the cost per unit of whatever happens there. Or the developer sells it off, tries to sell it off, maybe sells off for a loss and has to make up for it in another project, which raises that unit price up, which again nullifies all this development charge discount that we're talking about. If you just do it with the OLT, council has the final say. If the person wants to buy the land, that land to knock down the hotel and build something new, you put forward your plan. So this is what I'm proposing. It fits into your plan exactly. Okay, boom, stamp, go. If you want to appeal for something different, you put the appeal in and you take your chances at council. Council says, yeah, okay, we'll let this one go. We like what you're doing. We'll let it go. Or they say, no, stay in line with the plan. And
Yeah.
you're going to find like, it's this rigmarole. It's like, how can we game the system to try and milk out as much money as I can is what drives up the cost of these units. I want to see something to address this from Bonnie Crombie. Like I want to see more about the procedure of how housing is built in this province, because that's what we need to see from the provincial government, not just a tax cut.
Yeah, but we should move on now to our second story.
Yeah.
But yeah, to bring it back to Bonnie Crombie, the key thing here that she's put in is a big tax cut for people buying homes, which, yeah, I'm not going to deny that's nice for the people who that will apply to, but it doesn't build a single house, and it doesn't, it doesn't help the housing market in any shape or form. You may feel like you've got more money to spend on a house, but the house market will simply adjust to take account of that. So, first-time home buyers can spend more now. So that means your first-time house is going to cost an extra 13 grand to buy. That's how housing, it's not a market based on what bricks and mortar cost, and it's dishonest of them to suggest otherwise. Yeah, let's move on to the next story. And this one, I think everybody's familiar with. It's the fascist asshole from south of the border, Donald Trump, our neighbor to the south, our openly hostile neighbor that has declared its intention to screw over its closest allies by ridiculous tariffs that will harm its own people worst of all, of course. And the reaction of the various levels of government, and actually, is Doug Ford actually being, for once, actually the guy doing the right thing? Question mark, maybe, possibly. I don't know. What do you think?
I if anybody follows me on Blue Sky, which you should, or Twitter, I tweeted when I saw this story, I tweeted out, "Oh my God, we're governed by idiots," and I kind of stand by that, but I do want to walk it back a bit because, I don't think Doug Ford is the right man to be making this threat because I think he may actually entice Donald Trump into following through with it. Like this, I don't know how this is going to work out because you and I are rational people. The people, if you're listening to this podcast, I am assuming you are a rational, thoughtful person listening, and a 25% tariff is devastating to our economy as well as theirs, and it's just stupid. The problem is we're dealing with a man who is playing bully, playing chicken with his own economy to earn some kind of points in his for what contest, I don't know. I don't think it matters. It's a game that he's playing. He's willing to sacrifice his entire economy to win an ego contest. Doug Ford coming out to the bat and saying, "We'll shut off the power." My initial gut reaction is, "Fuck yes, Dougie, I'm on board. They want to hit us. Let them freeze in the dark." kind of attitude, and I'm on board with that. The problem is, I don't know if we have the fuel in the tank to sustain that kind of fight. I mean, if Donald Trump really just turns into, well, I'm going to personally take it to just screw over Ontario, he kind of can and probably will find some way to do it. Again, this, like, we're not dealing with a rational, thoughtful, intellectual man here, somebody who would understand. This is entirely petty and vindictive. And my worries are Doug Ford's kind of that kind of Doug Ford's not a big thinker. He doesn't understand the economy of Ontario. He understands somebody comes in and says, I need to make money. Can you change this law? Okay, I'll do that. That's Doug Ford. Can I give you this money and you make this plot of land available for me to develop on? That's Doug Ford. That's Doug Ford's understanding of the economy. I don't, he's not a thoughtful man that he's going to understand the nuances of a tech economy or an idea economy or a service economy or manufacturing. He's not a big thinker that way. And I'm worried these two idiots go head to head not over what's best for Ontario or what's best for the United States, but over their own ego. And I've got to get a win out of this. You and I, Roland, and our listeners, we're the ones who have to deal with the fallout one way or the other. I mean, Doug Ford and Donald Trump will not be hurt by this. They won't see a change in lifestyle. You and I on the ground will. At the same time, when you're this helpless, sometimes you just have to roll up your sleeves and just punch the asshole in the face, because Lord knows we tried it nicely the last time and it didn't work. So I'm kind of like, you know what? Maybe this is the attitude to have, is just fuck it. If we're going down, let's take all these bastards with us. And so, maybe Doug Ford is the right guy to have at the wheel on this one. I don't know.
The old cliche was, sort of the reductio ad Hitlerum. The every argument will descend to the point where someone compares someone to Hitler, and at that point you've lost the argument because you're just being an asshole. The problem is we're now in a situation where we're actually clearly dealing with someone who is very different from Adolf Hitler, but who is using the similar kind of tactics, and who is just a bully and a thug and a demagogue. And what we did learn with the Second World War, and I've just been rewatching, and it's all free on YouTube. I highly recommend anyone who's never seen this to go and find it. It was a British TV series called The World at War that was recorded in the 1970s, and it was narrated by Laurence Olivier. It's a little bit dated now, but it has like lots of first-person interviews. I mean, it's like a 24-hour series with an hour dedicated to sort of each section of the war, so like 24 episodes. Interviews with like leading Nazi military leaders who still lived after the war, sort of giving their side of, not giving like a positive spin, but sort of explaining what was going on. So the really first-hand accounts, absolutely fascinating. Go and check it out. Honestly, I mean, it's like the first thing when you start watching it is all about this kind of Munich and appeasement and Neville Chamberlain and all that stuff. And the newspaper leaders who were saying, well, maybe a Hitler win isn't so bad actually at the next election, and maybe it'll be good for the economy. And I suspect that once he's won, he'll actually moderate his opinions. All the stuff that's being said now, he doesn't really mean it. It won't actually turn out like that. Now, I don't frankly think Donald Trump has anything like the competence, dreadful word to use in the context, but the kind of awful competence of the Nazi party and the Nazi organization to get dreadful things done. I don't hold him in that high esteem, but he is a nasty, vicious little prick, and he's trying to bully the rest of the world into giving him what he wants, which is bigger profits for his businesses, ultimately, I think, as far as I can see. Mm-hmm. And to carry on as if this is business as usual, as if this was just another election. Okay, the first time he won, maybe you could get away with that, but it's not. This guy is a vicious asshole who's made it clear he wants to hurt us. Economically, fine. He's not going to come in. Well, I bloody hope he's not going to come in with the panzers anytime soon. But he's made it clear he is our enemy. Let's start treating him like our enemy. He's made it clear he wants to hurt us. He's made it clear he wants to hurt our economies, to hurt people who have to buy things every day of the week. Okay, so we need to hurt him back. And I would say Doug Ford is a colossal asshole. He's a colossal asshole who understands how people like Donald Trump think, because he's someone like Donald Trump and he thinks kind of the same in a slightly less vicious way. So, yeah, I think when someone threatens you with God knows what, threaten them with God knows what back and mean it and stand by your guns. Cut off the fucking power. And yeah, I'm sure it will hurt. But I mean, we are in kind of a state of war with a malicious, vicious asshole and a malicious asshole's government. And no, this is not our closest ally anymore. They are out to get us. And if that sounds paranoid, I don't think it should. It's said that they're out to get us, so fuck it. We should believe them when they tell us that's what they want to do.
I guess what angers me is that it takes fucking Doug Ford to make this
Yeah,
argument.
it's infuriating. It's infuriating that he would be the one.
It does. Like that's what gets me. Is like I'm agreeing with Doug Ford, and I that kind of just drives me nuts. Is that I'm sitting there going, yeah, fuck it. Like turn off the power. Let's put New York City in the fucking dark. Let's shut off the power to Trump Tower until and see how they like it. Will it change things in the States? Probably not, but you know what? It'll make us feel good while he's doing it. I think that's it. It's just we have to accept the fact the Americans are not our friends anymore. They are not. They are not the
majority. And the majority of voters voted for this man. Apparently, like 54% of voters believe that Donald Trump is going to be a good president, according to something last week. They voted for it twice now. I mean, okay, the first time they didn't actually vote for it, but he won. This time they really voted for it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
and they knew what he was up to. This wasn't like, oh well, we didn't know. They know what he's up to.
And I feel really bad about the pain that's going to cause millions of predominantly poorer, more blue collar Americans, but they fucking voted for it, so they're going to have to take the punishment now. And God damn it, we need to protect ourselves because we didn't vote for it. And we're going to have a wheezy little prick in Ottawa in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. We've got Doug Ford already. We need to protect ourselves, and we need to start realizing just how serious the stakes are. And we need some bloody leaders to stand up. And if it's Doug Ford, God damn it, I will support him if he's like, we will not be bullied. Now, thus far in Doug Ford's career, I've tended to think the guy's frankly a wuss and a coward. When the tough gets going, Doug Ford does a U-turn. It's my experience of him in the past. However, if he wants to prove me wrong on this, God bless him, go for it. Because things are really bad. Like, I'm not going to stop calling Trump a fascist now that he's won. I'm not going to pretend. I can't, to see Trudeau shaking hands with a man makes me want to vomit. He's that bad. He is a Hitler level asshole. Fine, he was elected again. So was Hitler. As we all know.
I am of the. I guess it just comes down to I'm kind of since Trump has been elected and it looks like we're going to get Poilievre in Ottawa, who I think is by just he wants to just be vindictive. I don't know. I think there'll be a lot of pain going around.
Yeah, he's gonna. We're electing these spiteful people who want to hurt their enemies.
Right.
For no other reason than they just don't like them, and that's what we're going to have here anytime now.
So, but here's the thing. I'm thinking. I don't want to say the age of progressiveness is over, but my God, progressive ideas are on the ropes, and I'm committed. Like we're going to have Donald Trump in the United States and the White House, the Republicans in control for the next 2 years. I think Pierre Poilievre is going to win federally, a super majority. And then here in Ontario, I think right now, Uh, Doug Ford is clearly winning. Is going to win the next election because right now, I mean, like listen to ourselves, Roland. We're supporting Doug Ford, and we're about as progressive as you can get. And the thing is, I'm seeing people online, people I talk to are supporting Doug Ford on this. I'm kind of in the mindset of, yeah, I am too, because fuck it,
I'm sick
why
of.
not? And I just like, hang on, I'm just, it's going to be a really troubling 4 years for progressives because it's going to turn into every man, woman, and child for themselves. Uh, forget your feelings, forget your, your, whatever. I don't know what you want to. I don't want to call it woke ideology, but that might be the only way to say it, is that forget all that stuff. It's not going to matter because the fight is going to be so much meaner and deeper than that. And if you're trying to find barriers to block people out so you can feel good about yourself, you're going to end up being alone. And I'm of the mindset of, if you're a progressive in this province, in this country, if by chance you're listening to us and you're south of the border, if you're an American, you find that you're listening to us for whatever reason, and you're a progressive, um, you're gonna have to put down the the checks and the criteria for being allowed into the club. If somebody says, I don't want you to lose, I don't want you to hurt, that has to be good enough. That has to be enough to call them an ally, to call them that they're on your side. Because if you're going to sit there with a litmus test of, you need to be this woke, you need to be this woke, you need to see this title, you need to be open to these things. Not everybody is, and you're going to be left alone.
Progressives need to stop shooting themselves in the foot
Yeah,
time and time and time and time again, ripping themselves apart because of a war in Israel and Palestine. And God knows, I understand why people get hot under the collar about that, more than hot under the
yeah,
collar.
yeah.
And whether you want to define it as genocide or just a hell of a lot of people dying needlessly or whatever you want to say, I don't care. But we can't keep on throwing away government because we're having stupid fights over basically how many angels fit on the head of a pin on the left. Um, it's gone too far. It's gone much too far. Uh, we desperately need some progressive leaders who have some. I'm not going to use the word balls because that is particularly sexist and stupid kind of phrase. Um,
Gumption.
Has the ovaries to come out fighting and land some punches on the fucking opposition. I'm sick and tired of it. And it's like, there are left-wing policies are something to be proud of, but every fucking progressive leader seems to be ashamed of actually saying what their progressive policies are, or edges towards the right because they think that's where the votes are going to coming from. No, they're not. Bonnie Crombie is not going to win going to the right. We know that. There's literally an article that went up 4 hours ago on the Star saying, is Bonnie Crombie basically the biggest gift to the NDP? Frankly, I suspect yes, but it's still not going to help because there's too many people who are going to vote Liberal. There are too many people who are going to vote NDP. There's never going to be enough to get the Tories out. We need people with spine, backbone, whatever, who can come out and land a punch on the opposition, make Doug Ford look like the moron he is, make Poilievre look like the moron he is, not be bullied by assholes like Trump. Say, screw you. This is fucking Canada. We're not taking this shit. And if you're going to set out that you are no friend of this country, then we are going to treat you like the enemy you say you are. Fuck you. I'm sick of it. Please, let's have some people who will stand up for ordinary fucking Canadians and be proud of standing up for ordinary Canadians, and not wishy-washy, half-assed progressives. Rant.
No, I cheers to that because I agree with it. I think we are. I think the progressives are too worried about inwardly looking to make themselves feel good. You brought the Israel-Palestine issue, and I say, yeah, that's a perfect example, especially here provincially in Ontario, to use that as the litmus test of whether or not we're going to support you provincially. I argue, say, You know what? Look at what happened south of the border. In Michigan, a number of pro-Palestinian uh, supporters turned their backs on Kamala Harris, and they got Donald Trump. I think ultimately they've disgraced themselves. They've delegitimized their cause in the face of progressive politics. I don't see why anybody would align with them ever again, because clearly they say you you're not a winning force. You're just a losing one. You've lost us big time. I would argue here in Ontario, the same forces are at play in the 905. I would say, I don't. I think they're ultimately not a spent force. I don't think will they win anything? No, I think and that's the thing. I don't think there's any strength to align yourself or any point to align yourself with these forces. I
It's
think
just
it's
part of the general malaise of progressive politics in
what just
Canada.
it turns me off because it's like I don't. It's not that the fact that we're talking about it is what drives me nuts. We focus a lot on provincial issues, municipal issues, and the fact that this shit comes up is such a distraction to what's actually needed to happen in the province and in our cities. And it's like, why do we waste our energies on this? My argument is, why are we divided about what's happening on this side of the world? We have Jews and Muslims and Catholics and Protestants and atheists and Buddhists and every other people of the world live in this great province. Instead of trying to say, I'm right, you're wrong, and spitting and attacking each other based on your faith or on your religion, we should be finding ways to come together and say, we can prove to the world that we can get along here. And then, and only then, can you then say to the rest of the world, put down your arms, shut the fuck up, go to the table, sort this shit out, and come home. But my God, we're really off topic here, but I just get really fed up with the bitching and whining of progressives and the timidness of not. And I'm going to bring this back full circle to Bonnie Crombie, because I say you came with a policy that should have been out 2 years ago, and you're now trying to introduce it into the world and into the Ontario political discourse, and it is too late, because I think we're the last people to talk about the policy. We probably will be the last to talk about it, because everybody else is going to be talking about Doug Ford wanting to punch Donald Trump in the face. And you've got us cheering him on now. I see a lot of other very progressive people cheering on Doug Ford doing this. And you're now trying to say, that thing you were talking about a year ago, yeah, I agree with it. Nobody cares at this point. You wasted 2 years. You wasted 2 years, and you could have been the one urging on the fight against Donald Trump to save Ontario's economy. And yeah,
There's a leader out there somewhere who can unify progressive voters. That ain't Bonnie Crombie, and I don't think it's Merritt Stiles.
and it's gonna be a long 4 years. It's gonna be a long, lonely 4 years until somebody steps up to the plate and says, I am the man, I am the woman, I am the person who is just, I'm fed up and I'm not going to take it anymore. And I want to hear a little bit. I don't want to hear political speak. I'm so fucking done with political speak. And everyone knows what I'm talking about. Just say it true, say it fast. You don't give me the double speak, the tax rigmarole, we have to wait to the right moments, the vibe session or whatever. No, fuck that. Say it like it is. Talk to people where they live, and we'll come around to you. But my God, this is just a frustrating time for anyone who's progressive, because our leaders have left us.
It really seems that way. It really seems that way, and we really need them, because the enemy is at the gates, quite literally. It's going to be charging 25% tariffs or 22% tariffs or whatever at our gates.
And that's just he hasn't even taken power yet. And this is what we're going to be dealing with on day one. Is he or is he? Maybe this is a bluff. Maybe it's a thing. But here's the thing: it's the first one. It's not even the first day, and we're already dealing with this shit. And we've got 4 years of this. Like we're at some point,
it's not a bluff. I mean, it may not happen, but it's not a bluff. He means it. He means to do it, because
I do too.
He cares.
I don't think he cares. He's not good. He himself will not be out or hurt in any way by this.
No, protectionism makes manufacturers rich because it means they've got a more monopolistic relationship with their market, which is their own people, and they can charge their own people more. There's a reason we moved away from it, and we moved away from it because of liberal progressive parties saying we need to get away from this because this is just screwing ourselves. And it happened, of course, way back in the 1800s and early 1900s. Free trade was a liberal, progressive, small L liberal, but liberal still the same, liberal progressive policy. The belief was it would end wars because when we rely on our neighbors for goods, we can't go to war with them. And to a large extent, they were right. The Western democracies don't go to war with each other as a rule. I think there's one or two maybe examples of that not being the case. But
my God, like I just bang my head against the wall these days, and I believe that person is out there. There's someone is listening to this, I hope, and say, yeah, I could be that person. We're gonna have to be patient for the next 4 years because it's gonna be a rough go. But I'm gonna hold true to the idea it's always darkest before the dawn.
Yep.
And that's kind of going to be my mantra for the next 4 years because it's going to have to be. On that note, I guess I'm going to leave it with that. Good luck, good night, and good luck, as Edward Morrow used to say. And we'll see you on the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Just for now, bye.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.